Seems fair to me.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Good to have you aboard. Thanks to our friends at the Gatesworth for making this program possible, as you do week in and week out. And let's say hello to those assembled around the table for this edition, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese of KTRS and beyond, Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. One of our founders, he's Ray Hartmann. And from STLMag.com and the St. Louis American and beyond, Alvin, Reid. And before we begin the discussion tonight, let's remind or maybe inform our viewers that tomorrow night between 5 and 7 at the Schnucks, Richmond Heights, we'll be ringing the bells for the Salvation Army, and we hope as many of you as possible can come by. We reach out to you. Please come on out and say hello and raise some money for a wonderful cause.
Give all the children a Merry Christmas.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's tomorrow, 5 to 7, Schnucks, Richmond Heights. Alvin Reid ran into you today, along with Congressman Lacey Clay. The two of you were downtown St. Louis for different things, so it's coincidental that we ran into each other. But Congressman Clay was downtown because this was the day that the city of St. Louis transferred the land to the federal government for the transfer of the National Geospatial Agency from South St. Louis to North St. Louis. So today, the land that'll be the new site for this facility is officially federal property. And I thought it was interesting because it's been pointed out that the city actually has spent at least $120 million, which it'll recapture through the earnings tax, to prepare the land for this site, $120 million. Meanwhile, Apple announced that it's moving to Austin, Texas. It's going to have a $1 billion facility and 5,000 jobs, and Austin is giving $0 in tax incentives to Apple. Do you think sometimes we're giving away the candy store?
Well, before we go into that, I have to point out that Congressman Clay was there to see Carol Daniel of KMOX, and I was on Dave Glover's show, and Charlie put us both to work for him. A true story.
Well,
taking advantage. But
you weren't forced.
No, always a pleasure. But I don't have a problem with it because, NGA was in St. Louis. And we were competing not with a national, entity, but other sites around the region. And so just clearing this land, especially some land on the north side of St. Louis, $120 million, to me, that's not the same as giving away the candy store. That's a sound investment on a governmental facility, which is not going anywhere, which is not going to close, and which in these days and times I would imagine is only going to get bigger. So don't have a problem with this one.
Oh, it's the same story, different day. I mean, we're not Austin. I mean, and it's real. Austin, I believe, is one of the metropolitan areas, way smaller than ours, that if you project out maybe a decade or two, will be as large as St. Louis. It's growing that quickly. And the fact is, we all agree that corporate welfare is not a great thing, and that until there's some national...
This is government welfare.
Well, I understand, and I don't disagree with you. The trouble is, this is a city trying to avoid bankruptcy. It's trying to do everything it can to stay alive, and it's just not, it's apples and oranges to compare it to Austin.
But we are a bigger city than Austin. We do have a great workforce.
No,
we just give anybody who asks for it, whether it's the Arch downtown or the federal government. I don't know other cities that are spending tax dollars for the federal government.
On this Austin thing, Charlie, first of all, the state of Texas is given a bunch of money.
No, not a bunch, just $25 million, which is a third of what Clayton is giving Centene.
All right, well, another odd thing about it is I don't think the people of Austin are thrilled with this. I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law who live in Austin, and they're always complaining about how the tech people have driven up all the prices, and Austin's no longer weird. The weirdness is drafted down to San Marcos, where my son lives. But, Austin is congested, and they're not, I imagine a lot of the people are not happy about this. We'd be thrilled But the rich get richer. That's just the way it is.
And Deirdre O'Brien, who made the announcement today in Austin, spoke of the existing relationship that Apple has in Texas and in that area. And I think, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of that either, that we're not known as a tech hub yet. I mean, maybe we will.
I think we're pretty strong, at least in the rankings by national publications. I just feel our leaders who have given away probably $7 billion in the last 20 years, they give it to anybody. And meanwhile, we look at other cities. Why don't we learn from their example? Say no. In April 2017, the voters in the city of St. Louis said no to MLS.
But
the MLS
we darn near lost NGA to St. Clair County.
Right.
And I thought we would. And the fact that we somehow managed to retain the NGA was a big victory.
And I think
every one of these,
or a government.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Because I was just going to say,
Don't put
we all
NGA
were against that vote on
or a
soccer.
government facility.
Right.
Compare that to, you can't do it. That's what my distinction is. Let me put it this way. If we could have got Apple here for $120 million, we'd be all over that. Okay? So if we could keep NGA here for $120 million, then that's a good deal. Most deals are bad.
You're right, but I don't know of other states that subsidize the federal government or cities. We're doing it twice.
I think if you're talking about politicians, they believe that more jobs equal re-election. And I think one of the things that Claire was roundly criticized for within the progressive arm of your party was not being aggressive enough. When it came to bringing jobs or keeping jobs, retaining. Claire
I don't
was.
remember hearing that.
I don't
But
remember.
It's all over.
The larger point is to have just, and I don't conflate the facade of sports franchises, which is mostly money just shifting around, with what Alvin's talking about, which is permanent, solid job, tax-producing jobs. And if we had were willing and courageous enough to just say no to NGA, we would have just said goodbye, in St. Clair, and not that St. Clair County isn't part of the region.
We gave up the earnings tax, right? So what do we get out of it if it had been St. Clair County?
St. Clair County's
if it's St. Clair County had gotten it, what would be the difference for our area, for our region? What would be the difference?
Half of the earnings tax.
Yeah, half of the earnings tax.
Right, half of it.
It was
not
good
all
for
of
the
it.
But now we have a big hole in South St. Louis. Okay, well, I'm sure that there will be some phone calls on that on your turn as we move to you, Wendy. This is an interesting story because a Republican Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, is now investigating the next U.S. Senator from Missouri, Josh Hawley. The Kansas City Star and others have reported that in the early days of Hawley's tenure as Attorney General, he had his political operatives running the show inside the offices in Jeff City. So Jay Ashcroft is investigating it, and he's picked one Christine Heisinger, who has given $24,000 to Democrats recently, including financial contributions to Hawley's most recent opponent, Senator Claire McCaskill. Just for appearance's sake, don't you think this was a poor choice?
I do, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. But Josh Hawley, if this is proven to be true, I will be stunned. Because Josh Hawley, to me, is the anti-Greitens. Greitens, both of them have, looked for a successful political career, apparently since they were in, short pants. I mean, it looks like a lifelong ambition. Greitens was obviously kind of compulsive and had an issue with that. To me, Hawley looks like the kind of guy that hasn't had a single misstep. So I will be stunned if this is borne out. But in terms of Christine Heisinger, if this is, we've entered the era where if we don't like the results of an election, we find a way to overturn the results of that election. We're seeing it in Washington, and I am sorry to see that happening. I think that in light of that and the current climate, a Democrat who has contributed generously to Claire McCaskill, a Democrat who has contributed generously to Claire McCaskill's campaign is not somebody I would want investigating Senator-elect Hawley?
She works for Jay Ashcroft. Good. First of all, we always talk about bipartisanship. And to correct you, by the way, what's going on in Washington is the criminal prosecution of someone.
Well, let's stay on this.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry.
I'm just saying, but let's not let that pass. But the point is, this is Jay Ashcroft, to his credit, and I'm not in the business of praising Ashcroft over the years, to his credit and to the astonishment of Republican friends of mine, is having the independence and the integrity not only.
It's not Ashcroft, it's Heisinger that's the question.
Well, she works for him.
Right.
He brought her
and
in.
she's a donor to Democrats.
So she's supposed to leave the planet? I mean,
No,
and
no,
the point is, the other thing he's doing that is very positive is he brought in Nicole Galloway with her subpoena power, which would disprove any conspiracy theories. Normally, you'd expect, well, this is nothing to see here.
Well,
move
she's a
along.
state official,
This looks
but-
like a
okay.
real investigation.
Right.
I think, first of all, I don't see Hawley as the opposite of Greitens. I see Hawley as
Cut from the
Greitens
same-
without a military resume.
Thank you.
Okay.
But I think that you're wrong, Ray, on the idea that there's nothing wrong with somebody who gives to the Democrats investigating a Republican. If it were vice versa, we'd be upset.
No, not if she's working for a
and I
Republican.
That's
thought
not
it was
true, Ray.
She works for Ashcroft.
completely bizarre that Ashcroft announced he was going to get the auditor involved because she has subpoena problems. If I'm a Republican, I say, hey, we just lost our governor, and now you're going to let a Democrat start subpoenaing.
But don't you
on
think
our
that's a good
senator?
thing? I mean, why is that a bad thing?
I would rather see somebody investigating who hadn't given money to either of them.
What different?
It makes
No,
a
it's the
difference.
appearance of
It's
impropriety,
optics.
right?
Well, what is she
Optics.
supposed to?
Wait a
She's
minute,
supposed
wait a
to not
minute.
work
Ray.
in
No,
state
you know,
government?
how many,
No, what is she supposed to
how many
do?
members of the bar are there in Missouri? Did you have to find one to investigate who gave $24,000 to Democrats, including Claire
Are you
McCaskill?
saying that anyone who gave money to a candidate should be disqualified for being an attorney?
No, what I think he's saying, or what
working for
I'm
the
saying
government?
is,
It's the
what I'm
appearance.
saying is,
Let Alvin talk for a
Ray,
minute.
in all honesty, man, if we flip the parties here, you wouldn't have a problem with it.
Of course
Not
he
if
would.
a
I
Democrat.
mean,
Excuse me.
Of course
If a
he would.
Democrat hired a Republican to investigate another Democrat, no, it's
I
exactly
have
what we
a-
should
I have a-
want is to not have party lines, and it's like you're acting like it's some scandal that she gave money to a
No, Ray,
Democrat.
we're just saying if
No.
you're going to have an investigation succeed, you don't want the investigator to already be a known enemy giving money to the opponent of the guy you're investigating.
She was
Can I go back to what you
appointed
said,
by a
though?
Republican.
Absolutely.
We know
What
that,
you
Ray.
said
We know
originally
it.
about
Absolutely.
just trying to overturn an election. I think the one thing I would have done if I was Ashcroft said, like, there's going to be an investigation into this, but oh, by the way, he's still going to be the senator. The worst that could happen to him is that he gets a fine. So anybody who's licking their chops like this, well, we got our chance.
Yeah.
That's over.
Well,
so let's
to me-
be upfront and honest. I'm not going to appoint a Democrat to investigate him, but the bottom line is
Charlie,
nothing's going to happen
gonna
except him
happen.
getting sworn in January.
Charlie, the real intrigue, and I know it's more for the political junkies, is the whole dynamic between Ashcroft and Eric Schmidt and what was believed to be a rivalry for the Attorney General spot if Hawley was to win the election. There's a lot of political intrigue, and the people, I'm just shocked that everybody's like, well, we talk about bipartisanship, and it bothers you that a Republican picks somebody who gave to a Democrat to investigate somebody. I don't think it's wrong at all. I think it's and if it was a reverse, it'd be fine.
Oh, come on,
It
Ray.
would.
If somebody who gave
Democrat
money to the
said-
Republicans were investigating
And they worked
our
for a
newly
Democrat.
elected Democratic
Yes.
senator, you'd say that's fine.
No, I would.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Hey, let's move on. Bill,
would.
I want to ask you, speaking of getting hot under the collar, I was this week when I saw one of your colleagues in an page A2 story take a look at a Ladue kid, the student at Ladue High School, who was flashing the OK sign. I think it was part of a rally for the football team. As we know, the Ladue Rams played the MICDS Rams in the state championship, right?
The Rams won.
The Rams won. Yeah, it was the Rams
And they
against the Rams.
lost, too.
So here's the deal. Yeah, didn't hear that a lot in St. Louis. But, okay, here's the deal. The OK sign is a ubiquitous sign, but the story seemed to indicate that it was associated with white nationalism, even though we went through this during the Kavanaugh hearings when there was an attorney behind Judge Kavanaugh who had something similar to the OK sign, and the Anti-Defamation League said, no, unless you see other overt signs of white nationalism, that OK sign, which has been used by Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, is not a sign of white nationalism. don't you think this was a smear of the Ladue High School student?
No, I don't. And I should say about these signs, the victory sign, peace sign is all the only one I go. But I have heard that, white nationalists have been trying to usurp the OK sign. I knew nothing about it beforehand. But what happened with the paper was somebody called a reporter, David Hunn, and said, hey, there's a kid on the Ladue website flashing what white nationalists are using as a sign. And so Hunn said, okay. So he looked up the website, and it was gone. So he said, So he called, and the Ladue people said, oh, we took that down because, we heard from somebody else in the media that this is a white power sign. So it wasn't like the paper ginned this up. And now the question, should it have been run? Well, certainly not identifying the Ladue kid, and in fact, the Ladue kid was not identified in the picture. And I'm told that the picture, he wasn't smiling like, hey, everything's okay, that he was kind of somber and flashing that sign. I had never heard that the OK sign was a white symbolism sign. But, in the Kavanaugh hearing, there's that person like this, and maybe they're trolling liberals. I don't know what they're doing. But something is going on from the white nationalists with the tiki torches to those to those kids in Wisconsin with the Sig Heil, and now, so people who've read like Christopher Isherwood's Berlin Diaries or seen the movie Cabaret and think something's going on. Maybe it should be reported. Maybe not. I don't know. But I didn't think it was outrageous.
I think on the heels of the complaint in 2016 on the school bus, the kid who said that she was being victimized by some racial racist comments. And I think that's recent history, and I'm sure there's a great deal of sensitivity
There's also
there.
a backstory to this, and I don't know who called the Post-Dispatch. However, just a month ago, MICDS's football players were accused by Parkway North football players of unleashing a lot of N-bombs on them during a football game. It was a really bad scene over there. This comes in the wake of that, okay? Who is Ladue playing but MICDS?
Actually, people on both sides were complaining
Charlie,
on that one.
I know
but
that.
I will say this.
I'm saying,
I
who got
want to back
accused
up a
of
little
calling
bit.
somebody?
Because when Zena Bash, I think that's her name, she was the attorney who did this during the Kavanaugh hearing. She had this OK sign. It was investigated widely by the Washington Post and others, and they found out that it is true. There were a group of trolls who purposely tried to fake out the liberal media by flashing OK signs and associating it with white nationalism, which turned out to be a hoax. It was a joke. Now, there are some white nationalists who are too dumb to realize it was a hoax, and they might use it. But in this particular case, as in so many others, it could also just be OK,
of course,
which is a ubiquitous symbol.
And nobody's saying that they know what was in the mind of this student from Ladue, and his picture was blacked out. But if you think that something's going on in the country, something a little weird, they've been reporting on it.
I realize that this is off the beaten path of Donnybrook, but Beyonce and Jay-Z have been accused repeatedly of being members of the Illuminati. And so after a while, they started making the sign every time a photographer took their picture, just to kind of, bait the press.
That did happen.
Right.
And I'm a liberal. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
I'm a liberal who's tired of these issues and tired of as a civil libertarian, I'm just tired of these issues, frankly. If you work for a newspaper and you're a reporter and you get a lead and then you find something that was taken down, it's sort of not. It's not the sort of thing you just drop.
Yeah. I will say this though, Ray.
From the reporter's standpoint, I can't really fault
I do disagree with Bill.
I don't think it's a big story.
I think the kid can be identified, even though his face was blocked out, like by his friends, whatever. I'm sure in the Ladue area, he's now like, okay, we know who this is, and he's been associated with white nationalism, even though he's giving a ubiquitous sign. And I also think that the media in general should rethink its investigation of kids who are at school. There was a time when the newspapers were not concentrating on these stories, by and large, and now I think that kids should have a certain protection when they're doing something within the confines of a school.
That's an interesting point, Charlie. You might be right. What about that recent case in Wisconsin? Did you see that picture where all the kids are given the Sig Heil sign before the prom? I mean, it got a lot of publicity, and you know, I look at that, and those kids, their faces were clearly identified, and you look at it and you go, geez, this is really strange.
And I will agree with you on that. I thought the kid wasn't identifiable. If he was, that's a different story. 'Cause I don't think he should have.
Well, that's just like kind of like a.
You're saying if he was identifiable, that's a different deal. The kid should not have
It's just
been.
like a libel lawsuit.
There's no way
Well, what
he
is
should have
your
been
community? It could be your
identifiable.
family. You know, it could be those closest to you that know you're the person that they're talking about. It does not have to be the greater good.
And I think the story could have served its readers well by noting that the Anti-Defamation League of all organizations,
I thought
it did not, had said that no, it looked at the Southern Poverty Law Center, which said that it was a hoax. But the ADL said that this is not a sign of white nationalism. And that's... Anyway, okay, let's go on to you, Ray. I want to ask you about a St. Charles lawmaker who wants to end the earnings tax in the city of St. Louis. What's old is new again. Actually, the voters in the city of St. Louis do vote on the earnings tax every 5 years by state law.
Exactly.
Well, okay, I don't think the earnings tax is actually attracting people. When I got here in 1988, we had, 400,000 people in the city of St. Louis. Now we're down to 300,000. Whatever it's doing, it's not attracting people and jobs, but what do you think?
What I think is that the voters in the city of St. Louis and the city of Kansas City voted on this topic, and it's a lot more important what they think than what any of us think, and that goes for whether we live in a city or not. They voted by 80% margins in the city and roughly in St. Louis and Kansas City and laid this issue to rest. It was brought upon us. It was a horrible thing, and it was brought upon us by Rex Sinquefield, who perhaps is going to find a way to support this fine state senator in St. Charles. This is part of a bigger trend that concerns me. And in 2020, there's going to be a movement afoot for a statewide vote on a city-county merger of some form, to force a merger or a unigov or something on the city and county using kind of the rural vote against the city and county's interest. The larger issue here is self-determination. The worst thing about what Rex Sinquefield did to us with the city earnings tax is cities like Columbia, Springfield, Cape Girardeau have no right to do an earnings tax now because of the rest of the state. It's crazy.
One would think that a Republican legislature, when the Republicans traditionally were all about local autonomy, would be loath to come up with an idea of the state will tell locals what to do.
Exactly.
I mean, if, like you say, Ray, if St. Louis and Kansas City say we need an earnings tax and we want one, that's fine enough.
Backing up what Ray said on the program I was on today, Rodney Boyd was on with me, kind of like political insider, moderate Republican, and he kind of hinted the same thing. He did not say that this was absolutely coming. He said, but the story going into 2019 and heading into 2020 is going to be exactly like you said. And there is going to be a move to force a vote on the county and the city.
And I think Democrats and Republicans will like that, but a lot of Republicans, or at least the Rex Sinquefield crowd, likes that because they believe if you change the charter for the city of St. Louis, which would change if we had the merger, the earnings tax will be null.
But
that's
again,
fine,
aren't
but
we?
People are underestimating what people in my neck of the woods think of this.
But again, aren't we overturning or ignoring the will of the people? And
Absolutely.
why
In the
does
city,
this continue to happen repeatedly?
I think the reason is because there are lawmakers like this guy in St. Charles who think that the earnings tax is hurting the city, and the city is incredibly important for the region. And it's,
But
let's say we were talking about
residents of the
Austin.
city-
Austin, the state has no income tax, and Austin has no earnings tax, and there's something to that. People move out of the city because of that earnings tax.
St. Charles declares almost daily that they could care less about the city of St. Louis, so why all of a sudden they got to
You really believe that people move out of the city of St. Louis solely because of the earnings
I know some
tax?
people who did.
Okay.
Tom Jacobson, who was the
reasons.
head of U.S. Bank at the time, he moved to Hanley and Forsyth for that reason.
He did
one of the
indeed.
founding-
Let's not lay the bank president and say we're all like the bank
That's
president.
exactly right.
One of the oldest principles of the country is to be concerned about taxation without representation, and it works in reverse too. The ability not to be taxed without representation. The idea
that would be a
of- it
worker in the
doesn't
city. A worker in the city
what?
is taxed.
The fact, and
can't vote on it.
the point of that, which it has perfect logic to it, and I really wish we could get away with this we in the city, they in St. Charles. I agree. We talk about St. Clair County. It's one region. It's not like like but the city has a right to.
Let me
But you're the one that wanted to
we only
take
have
them-
2 minutes, less than 2 minutes
Okay.
to go. So thanks. I know there are going to be a lot of calls upon this and other issues. Alvin, the Riverfront Times had a front page story saying that there are restaurants in Ellisville and elsewhere that can't find workers. And they said it's probably a transportation problem getting people maybe from the city out there. Do you think that's the real reason?
Well, that might be part of the problem. Certainly if we had a real mass transit system, that would help. But quite frankly, at no time when I was growing up, I'm 58 now, or generations behind me or whatever, at no time were there a need for people who lived in the city to come out and work at restaurants in the county. Younger people hustled, got a job, got busy. That's missing right now. And that idea of working in a restaurant, and I'm like 17, 18 years old, it's not there. And I don't know if it goes back to that work ethic or this millennials or whatever, but quite frankly, the people are there that could fill those jobs and get paid. They just don't want to do it.
Well, one of the reasons is you got to do community service for your college resume or I don't know what. You know?
How does that song go? What's the matter with kids today?
Yeah.
Why can't they
Bye,
be
bye,
like
Birdie.
we were? Yeah.
I sound like my grandfather.
Well, you also
no,
sound like
no.
there was a restaurateur. Actually, RFT quoted a restaurateur who was closing a restaurant, talking to St. Louis Magazine about this very point, and that person probably has a pretty good idea, saying, regardless of whether it affected their restaurant, that idea that they can't find people in their area to work was pretty. She ought to know.
Yeah, closing for that reason. Well, I'll tell you what, don't forget everybody, tomorrow night we're going to be at the Schnooks in Richmond Heights between 5 and 7, ringing bells for the Salvation Army, and we welcome you to join us at that time. Let's tell you how you can comment on our program. Send a letter to KETC 3655 Olive Street, zip code 63108. How about those emails, letters at ketc.org, and those tweets? Hashtag Donnybrook STL. We welcome those because Ray and Wendy will be reading those and taking your phone calls in just a moment on your turn. So don't go away, and see you tomorrow night at the Schnooks, Richmond Heights.
What's the matter with kids?
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Welcome back to Donnybrook, Your Turn. It is your turn. I am sitting here with our founder and the star of our program, Mr. Ray Hartmann. I will be his co-pilot, and we'll be flying at an altitude of 35,000 feet. Let's see who's up first.
Elise from House Springs, thanks for calling and welcome to Your Turn.
Hi, Elise.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my call. The reason why I'm calling is because I have to agree with something that you said, Wendy, on the show multiple times. You were talking about the taxes in the St. Louis City and Kansas City, and why are we trying to overturn the will of the people? And I agree with you. And not only are they trying to do that, but there are two other issues that the voters recently voted on, which is right to work, and then I believe it was Prop 1, which was
Clean Missouri.
in the state.
Clean Missouri, right.
Right. And they're trying to overturn that now, too. And I don't understand why lawmakers just can't take what the people of the state have voted on and accept that. It's very disheartening, and it makes, well, I vote all the time, and I will continue to do so, but I'm sure that it makes a lot of other voters very frustrated and feel like, why vote if the lawmakers aren't going to take into consideration what we, in fact, vote for.
At
And that's all I have to say.
Here.
Yeah.
They do it because they can. And it really is amazing. I mean, in Missouri, the number of times that that's happened.
But don't you think it's a recent? I mean, it's a fairly
Yeah.
recent phenomenon that
think
we're
you're right.
seeing, and it's
You're right.
actually kind of ominous in my opinion. But thank you, Elise.
And the idea that the politicians are going to stand
gonna
for
roll over.
Clean Missouri, cleaning up lobbying.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
All right, let's go to Ron in Soulard. Hi, Ron. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Well, thank you for taking my call. And the lady, I was going to say the same thing. But the most important thing I want to say is about this city earnings tax. The city of St. Louis will be bankrupt without that city earnings tax. You want the city to fight crime. You want to build a stadium that the people have voted against. You want them to do a lot of things in the city, but we can't tax people who use the services, come into the city, throw their trash down, double park. We charging everybody for living in the city, and you just pay your share for the city to be a better place to live.
Right.
If you want to come to a better place.
Thank you, Ron.
And thank
Well
you
stated.
for
And
the
you know, we hear from
what-
people that
Wait,
we're not living in the city. We're coming to you from the city of St. Louis, beautiful Channel 9 and great
Grand Center? Yeah.
area, and it's really. I mean, I happen to be very strongly think that there's a perfect logic to the city earnings tax, as someone who's paid it, pays it, and that is that people who come for the day and use the police and the fire and the streets and the other services, you know, it's their way of contributing, and many people come to downtown, not as many as used to, but so there's some logic to it. But the bigger point is that the folks voted 80% to
That's
keep
right.
it. It really
That's
doesn't
right.
matter what you and I think.
No.
I mean, yeah.
And Ron, we thank you
Thank
because you certainly are speaking for a lot of people.
Let's go to Kathy from St. Louis County. Hello, Kathy.
Oh, hi, Wendy, and hi, Ray. It's
doing?
nice talking to you. On the Josh Hawley investigation, I don't think a majority of people in the state of Missouri realize he lost millions of dollars for people in this state because he couldn't run that office. They had to sub out because he couldn't litigate the cases. This should have been rectified a very long time ago, because I don't think any of us, if we go into a job and we're not running it properly for the first couple of weeks, that we're going to stay there. And I'm wondering, are they going to be able to get all of the information from that office? And is the Senate going to sit him if he's under investigation?
That's an interesting question. The answer, I think, is yes to that, because of who the Senate is controlled by. I don't think the House would, because the Democrats control the House. But that's an interesting point. And I would say I was alone on this issue. I think this is actually to the credit of Jay Ashcroft. I can't believe I'm saying those words.
I can't either.
His father was somebody I disagreed with so much for so long, although he's really a nice
But you had respect
He's a nice
for
man.
him. Yeah,
I've always
you
respected
did.
his integrity.
Sure.
And maybe Jay Ashcroft's trying to brand himself, I'd call it an oxymoron.
But what can he do if a question has been raised about Senator-elect Hawley? He's got to follow.
Well, but to his credit, and I'll stick to my guns, the fact that he has some dreaded, appointee working for him who happens to gave money to a Democrat, as if that was a crime, and the fact that he's brought in the Democratic auditor with subpoena power, it is the best example of bipartisanship out there. I can't believe everybody isn't embracing that and giving Jay Ashcroft credit for what appears to be an independent investigation of somebody in his own party. And I know for a fact that there are Republicans very upset about it.
There are Republicans who are very upset about it, but I think in terms of the Democrat who has Heisinger, Ms. Heisinger, I mean, no disrespect, I just can't remember her name at this moment.
She works.
But I understand that she works for Mr. Ashcroft, but I just think in terms of optics, we have to.
I think it's great optics that a Republican picks a Democrat to investigate a fellow Republican. I think that's perfect, and if it were flipped, I think it was perfect. I think it is perfect that we have
Several of us
both
on the
parties
panel
involved.
disagree with you tonight.
I know
Ray.
you do, all four of you. I don't get it,
With
but
how
that must
open-minded
mean
you would be if the situation were reversed.
I
but
would. I
Kathy,
think it's
we
fine.
thank you. You make
Who's
a
next?
terrific point. Let's go to Bill, first-time caller from Rock Hill.
Who?
Hi, Bill. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn. Bill.
Bill from Rock
Ray,
Hill. How you doing,
Ray,
man?
this is our turn, not your turn.
Sorry,
okay.
I'm talking too much. I'm sorry.
Now that we got that straight, I'd like to comment on the situation about the photograph from the football player with the high sign. Have you noticed there seems to be kind of a subculture that has developed that just spends all their time trying to find stuff to get offended by?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's just got to be ridiculous. I mean, this past week there was somebody that had a big conniption because they claimed Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was bullying, and they're all upset about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and now this thing with the high sign. And it's like, folks, first of all, get a life. Second of all, lawyers, stop taking cases for these people. And third of all, the Constitution, and you should know this, Ray, as being a member of the ACLU, controversial speech is protected speech.
I agree.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have a right not to be offended. And all these people that are trying to find these safe speech zones on college campuses and are trying to protect their, they're trying, there's no right to be not offended in the Constitution. It doesn't exist.
We agree, and I'm guilty of a lot of things, but sticking up for, defending
You
free
always
speech.
defend free
I mean,
speech.
yeah, I agree
You
with
do.
you. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Bill.
Let's go to the Twitterverse.
At Craig Riggins, my buddy, the Republican Secretary of State appointed the lawyer who will investigate what may or may not have happened in Josh Hawley's campaign. Has anyone questioned him directly why he chose her? That's a good question, Craig.
I think it's because he wants it to be a bipartisan thing. From Sister Sara 23 tweets, when it comes to the OK sign, I think it's about educating yourselves. Many cultures find signs that we may find harmless as insulting. Be respectful and think of the context in which it is used.
Thank you, at Sister Sara. At Steve Jakubowski, I would rather we drop the personal property tax instead of the earnings tax. It is part of the reason I bought a 2005 car. Thank you, at Steve Jakubowski. And
keep tweeting us at hashtag Donnybrook STL. And we will go to Brenda in Collinsville. Hello, Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, I'm calling about the OK sign. I was in the Army, and when we went to Germany in 1979, we were told not to use that sign because to the Germans it meant
I don't.
My goodness.
Okay.
Well, we thank you, and we're hoping our delay is working this evening.
It may or may not.
Thank you, Brenda.
Boy, didn't see that one coming.
Well, I thought that when she said they were in Germany, that if this was a question of a white supremacist, wow. Okay, Brenda, thank you so much
see that one coming.
for phoning in. I did not either. Let's go to Ron in Augusta, Missouri.
Watch your tongue, Ron.
Hi, Ron.
Yeah, really, Brenda, go, girl.
Hey, it's okay with me.
First off, Merry Christmas to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Same to you, by the way.
And as far as this Ashcroft thing, if I'm going to be investigated, I want the person that's going to dig up the worst stuff on me and just, if he's not guilty, he's not guilty. If he's guilty, he's guilty. I supported Josh. I think he's a good guy. But you know what? If we're going to investigate him, let's do it. I couldn't care less who did it. Let's find out what's going on.
I agree.
And as far as this silly OK thing, I'm a kid of the 70s in high school, so I had to watch my black friends, and I probably would admit I maybe even at a weak moment joined in with the clenched fist for black power. We have white power, we have black power. We shouldn't have that stuff.
Okay.
We don't like either one.
All right.
We're just one country.
Okay. Appreciate that sentiment,
Thank you, Ron. We appreciate you calling.
Let's go to John from Maplewood. Hi, John.
Hi. How are you guys?
Good.
Hi.
Don't find myself in a position to contradict Alvin on many occasions, but tonight he said something that just isn't true. my own two boys who are under 16 are both working. One of them's working in a restaurant in Maplewood. The other one's cutting grass and, hustling, trying to make money any way he can. And I think the school district really sort of encourages kids, to get all kinds of experience,
Right.
They've done a great job. The community here has done a great job embracing these kids and giving them that experience. And I think it's really a school district on the rise and a community on the rise.
Okay.
So,
well,
and Alvin's wrong.
If I can stick up, I'd like to stick up for Alvin. I think he was making the point that in certain parts of St. Louis, in this case, was it Ellisville?
Chesterfield.
Chesterfield, that there are certain parts of more affluent West County that he was, I think, very tactfully and properly making the point that a lot of people weren't interested in doing those jobs. I don't think he was talking about Maplewood at all. And so I think that, that would be my guess of what he was saying.
Well,
but,
I think
I appreciate the call.
Yeah, as a parent, or as parents, I should say, my husband and I thought it was very important because he and I had both worked in high school. I know you worked in high school and junior high school, and we worked in junior high school. I wouldn't want to send a child into a college or university experience without having a little more life experience, and you can't find a better place to acquire that life experience than on the job when you're a teenager. So I think parents are doing their children a great disservice when that's just my own personal opinion, when they don't encourage them to get a job, even if maybe they're in like Flint with college and everything's fine. They need to have a job. Thanks, John.
I agree completely.
And thank you for allowing me to vent.
Good for you. And at 16, I got to work for the great Martin Dugan.
That's
right.
I
don't think he ever.
And that didn't work out for you.
He ever came to grips with.
Of course he did. He was so proud of you.
His soul
He
rest
was
in
so
peace.
proud of you.
Bill from Bonterre. How you doing, Bill? What's
Hi,
on your
Bill.
mind?
Hey, guys. Wendy, I absolutely love you, but I don't like what you said about people who don't like the results of elections trying to overturn it through investigation. Investigations only get people who have committed crimes.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't commit a crime, don't be concerned about an investigation.
Right.
I think that anybody in public office should fear being investigated to death, because that's how we're going to keep crooks out of public office. And the ridiculous notion that people were pushing about a perjury trap. You know what? Perjury traps catch liars. You don't lie, you don't get caught.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's true.
And in this particular case, let's emphasize, there is the real appearance. I don't know if it's going to go. We don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
But the appearance of these outside political consultants, having engaged, members of the Attorney General's publicly paid staff.
Right.
It's really a troubling thing. And I think, again, I'll congratulate Jay Ashcroft for taking it seriously. I do think it's good that it's bipartisan in how it's being approached. And I'll stick to that. I can tell you, Kit Bond, there wouldn't have been any investigation because there was a very, I know I get criticized for pointing out all the time, but there was a very firm line that wasn't crossed in the governor's office when Kit Bond was governor.
Yeah, and Bill, I thank you for the love. I'm just saying that in these partisan, in these highly charged times, for Christine Heisinger to have contributed to Claire McCaskill, if she were just a Democrat, I would say the optics really don't matter then, but just down the road, you don't want anything to jeopardize or discredit or call into question the results of whatever she unearths.
It won't be. She reports to her boss as a Republican. That's the whole point. It's beautiful that both parties are involved together in this investigation. That's what we need. How she reports to Jay Ashcroft. All right, I give up. I can't win the Army. Who's next? I give up.
Larry in South County.
Leaving.
Hi, Larry. No, you're not. Hi, Larry. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi, guys. Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry Christmas to both of you.
On this city earnings tax thing, years ago, we moved from the city to the county, and it had more to do with the school system. We thought that the schools were becoming subpar, and a lot of people will move for that. But the city earnings tax was part of it too. We moved to Shrewsbury, and of course, we didn't have a city earnings tax there.
Right.
Right.
No, and I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think there's definitely pros and cons, but you agree, Larry, that the folks in the city, at least, voted fairly overwhelmingly in favor of it, and you may have voted with your feet. I get that, but I'm just saying, which you have every right to. But, you know, it was a pretty clear-cut vote in the city and in Kansas City.
And we've been debating this issue for decades, haven't we? And this whole question couldn't come, I think, at a worse time for the city, because the gap that would be left if you had that vacuum would be, I mean, we would be in real trouble. Larry, thank you.
Thank you for the call, Larry.
For the call. Let's go to Tom in Jefferson County. Hi, Tom. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Are you there, Tom?
Speak into the phone, not the.
Good evening and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
What's on your mind?
I just like to clarify. I'd like to clarify something on the earnings tax.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You don't have to. I didn't live in the city, and when I worked on construction or for an office in St. Louis, we had to pay the earnings tax, and there's no way to file to get that money back. It's a lot of money going in the city.
But that was the idea, that while you were working in construction in the city, if you needed a policeman,
or
the city was, or a firefighter, or a medic, or you needed the streets to not have potholes, the city